All right, how's it going, everybody? This is Ismortah, and this morning during my board game stream, Sunday 9 a.m. Central, I'm going to be showing you the game Cytosis, which, if it sounds familiar, came out a few years ago, and Cytosis is the biology of cells. Hence why it's called a cell biology game. And this is the collector's edition. I got this a couple years ago and wanted to show this off and show what it's all about, what's inside, and why I was drawn to this game. So I'll do an unboxing as well as show you general gameplay. I'll have a future stream go into the specifics of mechanics for each of these cell organelles, as well as the biology of the different parts of the cell. That'll be a future stream. This stream is all what is the game all about and what's in the box. All right, so and if you're interested in other streams of mine, every Saturday I'll also do video games 9 a.m. Central, obviously board games 9 a.m. Central Sundays on twitch.tv/Ismortah. Then the VODs are uploaded in 24 hours here, as well as on YouTube at Shadow Balance Games, with the schedule as well as updates to the content on Twitter at Shadow Balance. So let me show you what this game is all about. All right. So this is the collector's edition. I got this on Kickstarter, like I said, a couple years ago. And what makes it the collector's edition, other than saying collector's edition on the box, is you got the foil embossed lettering. It also includes the virus expansion. And it's stamped, showing you the unique box. The fact that mine is 5548 out of 5600. So I was one of the last backers during the Kickstarter that got a hold of this. All right. So the rule book is has many pages, but like I said, it's only because it's got a couple pages on the virus expansion, which includes not only the virus expansion, but also the epigenic modification cards. How to play, but that also has many pages on how the different types of organelles in a cell work and how you get different points and exchange resources for the different actions in the cell. So like I said, that'd be a future stream. I just want to get you to know what the game's all about. What does it look like? Also, what you got in the box is this little blurb talking just about the biology of the cell, which I'm not going to go into, but it's a cool read. So you can see, you know, the fact that what you're playing is actual biology. And that's what originally drew me to this game, is the fact that in a past life, I majored in cell biology. So the fact that now that I'm in the games, that can merge both worlds is pretty cool, because this is actually an educational game. So even though it is a, I'll say like a Euro, resource management game, do you exchange a resource for other resources and try to get victory points at the end of the game, it stays true to what you're doing in the cell and the fact you have to do things in certain cells to get resources to then have those go to different parts of the cell. The other thing that makes this collector's edition, which I forgot about, that I see here, is you have the upgraded components. Instead of having generic cubes of the different colors for the different resources, you have actually what they are. You have the different DNA and RNA compounds. You have the different, you can actually see the organic chemistry of the different things you're using in the cell. The ATP and flask they use to generate in a lab the different, I believe it's how you take your actions, but we'll find out. actually be able to see what different nuclei looks like. It's a lot of eye candy here. So yeah, a lot of components. These are all the different things that you generate and move in the game. Many, 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 many. And then here you have the virus expansion. You have the dice that looks very fleshy with the tone of the reds. And then you have the player cards you use for immune response to the viruses. This is what a cell looks like. I believe this is the first player marker, but we'll get into that. And then we have a bunch of cards used for the game. Ready? You can see the components and the color and everything is pretty good, because I did read the back of the box, and even though a lot of companies don't say where they manufactured from, this guy obviously, you know, advertising because it did such a good job for them, which was Panda Game Manufacturing. So you get a closer look at the foil lettering on the words, as well as some of the cells glow too. Pretty cool. So you got a bunch of cards for cell components, and then these are goals and events. You're trying to do different things in the cell. We'll get into that. All right. They say it's basically a lot of little wooden and cardboard and cards. All right, so let me get the board up. Biology 101 will be another day. Okay. So here's the board. Make sure I get this so you can see square. Okay. So the look you have here is actually like what a cell looks like. It's like here you see the outside of the cell, and then this is the inside the cell, and these are different organelles. Like for example, you have the Golgi apparatus, the rough ER, smooth ER. I believe it stands for ectoplasmic reticulum, if I recall. The nucleus, free ribosomes, the cytoplasm, that's the liquid in between inside the cell, and the plasma membrane. And so, yeah, you're doing different things in the cell, acting out what actually happens. So you learn something, and that's how you score points and gather resources toward whatever your goal is for victory points. So there's a lot of exchanges and icons showing different transactions and stuff. And I'm not gonna get in the weeds on that. There'll be a future stream on like what activities you do in the Golgi apparatus, what things can you do in the mitochondria. I was gonna say, like, you know, how does the game play? What do you do? Look at the shit. All right, so let's get into the game. We're not gonna set up the game. We're just gonna show what everything's all about. And let's see. And then you have different types of cards. Which I might have mixed up a little bit. Not sure. Maybe. Oh, I'll have to look at the back. See, okay. So these are all cell component cards. Don't worry, I'm going to show you what the stuff looks like so you can see. These are epigenic modifications. Oh, I see. These are events. These are goals. Okay. So I'll put here so you can see the back for the time being. So we have events, goals, epigenetic modifications, and then you have the cell components. Okay. And then this is virus stuff. So, Cytosis is played in rounds, and each round is divided into 2 phases. During phase 1, players will place their flask in order to collect resources and take actions with the goal of completing cell component cards and thus scoring health points. So every player has flask and nucleus. Now they're markers to show what those players are doing. Like I said, these tokens represent the different resources in the game. Which represents the yellow are the lipids, and that's the lipid chemical compound. Actually, I'll get out to show you so it's a little bit closer to the screen. Like I said, this stream's going to be mostly show and tell, not the mechanics of how it works. So the yellow tokens are lipids, and that's the chemical compound. And this one thing that's unique, again, about the Collector's Edition is having, otherwise in the normal edition, this would be just a yellow cube. The black are the proteins. Okay. And then, oh, I'm sorry. No. I don't know how to read. Reading is tough, especially when you don't read. Let's just do this in order. Black is mRNA. RNA is building blocks of proteins synthesized by DNA. Red are the proteins. Green are carbohydrates. Yellow are lipids. All right. And then this guy is ATP, which, if memory serves, stands for adenosine triphosphate. Just for fun, let me see if I'm right. ATP is like the cache of the cell. It's used to exchange resources, many different things in the cell, and in real life. Come on, this should say. Probably just here somewhere. Anyway, ATP. Like I said, you have flask and nuclei. So you see what some of the pretties are. All right, so now let's get into more game stuff. Like I said, setup and actual mechanics, specifically for different player setups, that'll be another stream. This is just like, hey, what's in the game? What do you do? Why should you get this game? And either to play or to learn. Okay. Once all players have placed all their flask, phase 1 is over and phase 2 begins. During phase 2, an event card will be revealed and the board will be refreshed. So, for example, like what's out here are cell component cards. For example. Okay. Phase 1, flask placement. Every round, the player holding the first player marker will be the first player to take their turn and then place clockwise. The first player marker, again, is the cell token. On their turn, a player must place exactly one of their flasks on any available spot on the board, and then must also immediately collect the resources or take the action associated with that spot. So again, this is a flask, which looks like a flask. And you place it somewhere on the board to do an action. And you place it anywhere, if I recall, where you see a square. So I can place it here, and you do stuff, or take stuff. And it has a cost associated. Like this plate here, you can exchange. Play it here, you can exchange different things for different things. To do different actions. Okay. Then the player to their left takes their turn. This flask placement process continues clockwise, with each player placing one flask at a time. So you start having multiple players place flask, but then you see once someone takes up a space, you can't move in that space, you have to go somewhere else, for example. Instead of placing a flask, a player may choose to collect a single mRNA lipid or ATP to exhaust one of their flasks. So instead of placing one of these flasks somewhere, you could also just get one of an mRNA, lipid, or ATP. So it's not all 5, but you get one of these 3 if you want. Then you have to do different actions and stuff in order to get carbohydrates and proteins. Carbohydrate, protein. Only one flask may be placed on each spot. If a spot is occupied, it is not available again during that round. There are 4 main types of flask placement spots in the base game. So there's also the virus expansion, which we'll get into at the end to let you know just what you get out of when you play this. There's 4 different things. You can collect resources to add a personal resource to add to your personal resource stock. You can purchase a cell component card. Again, these are cell component cards, which allow you to basically, these are like small goals that you can spend to ATP, and you have these resources. You can get goal of 7 health, for example. Steroid, you get like here, for example, biology and game mechanics. You're trying to create a steroid hormone in the Smoothie R. So if you have these in the Smoothie R, spend these and 2 ATP, you get 7 health. I believe is how it's played. But any corrections, like I said, to game mechanics, we'll get into in another stream. I'll show you another example. But it's you doing different things. Enzyme in the cytoplasm, you're creating an enzyme. And 2 ATP, these components, carbohydrate and 2 proteins, and you get 4 health. So you can purchase a cell component card. You can complete a cell component card, which is completing these, collect resources, and you can also take the first player marker. During phase 2, after everyone's done all the flask, all players should retrieve their flask they placed during phase 1 and return the gray flask to the gray flask area on the game board. All players now reveal the top event card from the event deck and follow the instructions on that card. For example, this event card says Glucose Transporter Boost. Add 1 additional carbohydrate cube to the glucose transporter this round. So it says reveal the top event card from the event deck and follow instructions on the card. Now this event deck is the only active event card. Any event cards from previous rounds are inactive. Then you remove the leftmost cell component card on the tracker here and place it in a cell component discard pile. Sure. Now, without changing the order of the cards, slide any remaining face-up cell component cards to leftmost open space. So you see these get more and more expensive or cheaper. So now all of their costs are reduced by 1. And the new card will be most expensive. So that mechanic is kind of similar to Small World, that the newest option is the most expensive, and the longer options stay out, the more valuable they are. But in this case, the cheaper they are. So then you'd load another cell component. Like, for example, alcohol detoxification. If there are no cards remaining in the cell component card deck, shuffle the deck, place face down, and grab a card. So for every round of the game, phase 1, everyone's placed in a flask to do different things. And the 4 different types of actions are collecting resources, purchasing cell component cards, completing cell component cards, taking the first player marker. Is basically what you're doing here, what you're getting and doing. And then phase 2, you play an event that happens in the cell, and then you advance this tracker here. All right? And then how the game ends is revealing the last event card marks the last round of the game. So there's only obviously a certain number of event cards. Blah. Play through phase 1 one last time, and instead of going to phase 2, skip directly to scoring. And that's basically how the game is played. Like I said again, I just keep saying this to reiterate, the mechanics of how the cell biology works and the different mechanisms of how they work each component, that'll be a future stream. As well as going to actual biology, because you'll learn the biology as I'm explaining the mechanics. But now I'll show you the other stuff you can add, which is largely the virus expansion, which adds the immune response cards as well as the epigenic modification cards. All right, so it adds new event cards to the game. Like for example, these are probably ones. Yeah, and how you can tell if you add virus cards as event cards. Normally event cards, you just see, stuff on the card. But if you see an icon in the lower right, that means it is part of the virus expansion. What's up in Icarus? So you see here that red symbol, that means it's symbol for virus, then that's a virus event card. Like here you can add rhinovirus event, or you can add a Ebola virus event. And it just triggering different things that just happen in phase 2. And also do after I go through the virus expansion stuff, I'll show you the cards so you can see all the things that are in it. And so what this adds again is you have the virus dice that have pips, and then the what's that symbol? Biological hazard. And it also adds the immune response cards. Player cards. All right. And it also adds new goal cards as well. Same thing. You have goals that give you additional resources or points at the end of the game, I should say. Points at the end of the game. And if you have the virus symbol in the lower right, then you're adding your virus goals. So the expansion adds new goals, new enzymes, and a new player board to modify, because this is doing activities in the cell, and this is doing activities to involved with the immune response. And so, what happens here? Each player mat features two main functions: the immune response area and the resource area. The immune response area, let's put here so you can see. This guy here. Here, move these so you can see. For science. So I'm talking about this guy right here. The immune response area. This section has 3 columns marked at the bottom with Ebola, influenza, and rhinovirus. So these 3 columns: Ebola, flu, rhinovirus. Flu being influenza, if not aware. The position of a player's antibody marker within a column indicates the number of antibodies that players built up to combat a virus of that strand. So I believe these wooden markers, I believe these are antibodies. I could be wrong. I believe these are the antibody tokens. And then the resource area, this here, indicates where a player may store their flask and goal markers not in use and their personal resource stock. So this is also pretty cool because before, like in the main game, you didn't have a dedicated area in your player space on keep track of your resources. So this adds not only the immune response tracker for the virus expansion, but also just a general way that you can keep your resources intact, and other players can easily see what other players have because everyone has their stuff in the same spot. So again, like ATP, like this, would go here. Macromolecules, that's stuff like lipids, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. These guys would go like here. And then worker goal markers. I believe that's where you put your flask, which gameplay-wise, I don't know why they didn't just call them flask, that you haven't used. And then this marks where you're at on the tracker as far as having resistance to different viruses. My comment here, though, on the tracker is, even though you can associate, if I'm covering up between 4 and 8, that's 6. It would be better if it was something that you could see the center of it, like a ring. That way you can see the number and you're just highlighting what you're using. But that's just game design 101. You shouldn't be covering up what you're trying to associate the value that someone has. Anyway, so that's how that works. So when a virus attacks, When a virus event card is flipped face up from the event deck, or a virus attack card is purchased from the cell component card area. Ooh, so it looks like for viruses, there were also cell component cards that you're adding some virus additions to. Oh yeah, like here, like this is a cell component card. But you look at the other side, you see virus attack. Interesting. So yeah, the virus expansion adds more of every type of card. All players, okay, when a virus event card is flipped during the event phase, all players roll a number of antibody dice according to their current position on the health track. So the health track is what you see here. So the position on the health track is number of dice, meaning that's how many levels is what's referring to. So even though each level you see has different number associated, the number, the track up, it's how many dice you roll. So this one's you technically would roll 2, this one you roll 3, this one you would roll 0. Gameplay wise, they should have added something to make that more clear how many dice you roll, just like some sort of tracker on the right hand side so it's clear. But like for example, if someone played a Ebola attack, this I would roll 2 dice because it's on the second square on the tracker. And the biohazard symbol is just a fancy way of showing the highest number, which is 6. Then each player adds a number of antibodies from the column of the player mat that matches the attacking virus strain. So you would add the number onto how many dice you're rolling. So what's interesting is you could, if you have a higher immune response, you not only would roll more dice, but you have a higher modifier. So if you're thinking like in D&D terms, lower, it would be like 2d2. Like, think of health potions, right? Low ones would be 2d2 plus 2d6 plus 2. And then higher levels, you got maybe 66 plus 10. And why it's cool having that plus value is because that means if you roll a lot of dice, you have a higher chance of getting higher numbers, obviously. But you could also bust. You could roll a whole bunch of really low numbers. Like, let's say you got a whole bunch of 2s and a 1. But because you also have that plus 10, you're going to have a decent protection regardless of what you roll, right? So it reduces the risk of rolling like shit when you have higher immune responses as well. Moral of the story. And then the sum is your antibody response. All players compare their antibody response and gain or lose resources accordingly. Which that's, details, blah. And then after all players have completed steps 1 to 3, each player will have the option to pay ATP. Again, this is ATP, the cache of the cell. It's what's used for many of the actions interacting in cells. And like I said, not only in the game, but in real life. To gain antibody matching the attacking virus strand, starting with the first player, holding the first player marker, and moving in player order. For each ATP paid, a player moves their antibody marker up that strain's column by 1. So if you're missing immune response, you can pay ATP to advance, to buy antibodies, basically. After all players have added up their antibody response, reference the antibody response resource allocation chart. Any resources gained or lost by the dummy players. This talked about 2-player variants. We'll skip that. obviously I don't know off the top of my head like why in particular you would do have more antibodies to resist, but I'm assuming that if you do what you're supposed to do with completely different goals, or cards, is that you'll get points. It's either be negatives or you get bonus score at the end if you have a greater immune response to these viral attacks. Okay, blah. Oh, I see. If you, it looks like if you have a low antibody response or can't match to beat it, you'd actually lose resources in the cell. And you need resources to do actions in the game to gain points, to have the most points at the end of the game on the points tracker, right? So. All right, so then lastly, what I want to talk about before I just show you different cards in the game is the rules for the epigenetic modification cards. Great, said it first correctly that time. And so these cards, you'd see Flask. And this is basically modifications to how things work in the game. Like, for example, this says, when purchasing a gray flask, you only pay 3 ATP. Whereas you see on this card, normally to get a gray flask, it costs you 4 ATP. All right. So it says here, each epigenetic modification card gives a player a unique ability that they may use throughout the game. I see. So every player has a special ability. That's what this is adding. So this is adding that each player kind of has their own special ability. We recommend you don't use the epigenetic modification cards until players have played Cytosis and are already familiar with the game. The epigenetic modification cards may be used with the base game of Cytosis or combined with the virus expansion. So this isn't part of the virus expansion. This is just basically adding a unique ability to the game you're already playing. And then it just goes into the game mechanics of how each of these abilities work, which, like I said, we're not going to get into. Cool. So now I will show you all the cool cards that you can interact with in the game. I've already shown you basically all different pieces. Now I'll show you, and I'll also do a zoom in at the very end with the camera so you can see on the board the different action areas that you can do different things in the game, to at least see it visually. Again, future stream, I'll go into the mechanics of how these work and interact in cell biology and why you have to interact in certain ways to do certain things. Okay. So, one thing I'm doing right quick is I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to separate the virus expansion cards from the regular cards so you know what's in one, what's in the other. But obviously when you play the game, you shuffle it in so you don't know what you're drawing when. Dirt. This way you just know what to expect in either version of the game. And obviously when you play different versions of the game based on number of players or what expansions you're using, you'd have different setups, and that's why I'm not getting into the setup of the game, because it will vary based on who's all playing. that. Let me get these goals. The goals, I'm going to look that up right quick. I believe that might be your hidden objective that you get bonus points, because nothing you do in this game do you get additional goals. So that must be your starting hidden objective to get bonus points. Let me just check that right quick. Just because that's a thing we didn't really gloss over on how it's used. Let me just find that right quick. Just because that's a type of card, just to give you a general on why or when you interact with it. Oh, I see. No, that's something you purchase in the game to get bonus points. It's something you do mechanically. So yeah, we won't obsess over that. Okay, so I will start with what we start with? I'll go backwards because what I'll show you are cell components. So we'll work backwards from what we've already showed today. So these are the epigenetic modification cards. When purchasing a gray flask, pay only 3 ATP. Pay 2 ATP to look at the top 3 cell component cards from the deck. Pay 2 more ATP to place one of those cards into your hand. Place unchosen cards back on top in the order of your choosing. Science. At the beginning of the round, pay 1 ATP to place one of your flasks before the first player, then resume normal placement position. Purchase cell component cards for free. When placing to collect macromolecules or ATP on a numbered spot, collect 1 additional macromolecule or ATP. Carbs still cost 1 ATP per carb taken. On your turn, trade ATP for lipids or mRNA at a rate of 1 ATP for 1 lipid or RNA. That's what the slash means. And trade ATP for cards at a rate of 2 ATP per 1 carb. And lastly, we got collect 1 ATP, mRNA, or lipid at the start of every round. Right, so that's all the epigenetic modifications. Science. Now we have the different goals. We have protein hormone receptors. I think I'm going to stop reading these and just allow you to read it. That's because it's getting pretty wordy. We have protein hormones. Steroid hormone receptors. Steroid hormones. Enzymes. Enzyme. Mimi, mommy. Immune response. And again, lower right hand side means viral cards. Virus attack. I believe that's all of them. So that's all the goals. Then we have event cards. Glucose transporter boost. Toxicity. Looks like I got 3 of those. Then I have 2 of the reduce ATP cost. I have 3 respiration boost. Glucose transporter boost. I think that's the second time I show that card, so I think we probably have 2 of those. Yep, we do. Total. Smooth ER boost. And lastly, Nucleus boost. I say lastly, but then we get into the viral cards. We have influenza virus, Ebola virus, and rhinovirus. And that's all of the event cards. All right, then lastly we have the cell component cards. There are an up-teen number of these, and I believe there's a bunch of duplicates as well. So let me see if I can't organize this a little bit so I don't read the same card multiple times. Give me 1 second. And then I'll end with, again, with showing you a close-up of the board so you can see a little easier the different cell components and the different game things you can do. We all like doing game things. That's why we play the game, to do game things. Alcohol detoxification, that's an interesting and important cell function. Let's see here. Just shuffling these so I can see how many, so it's less stuff to read. 1 second. Obviously, when you play the game, you shuffle your cards. But it's cool, so you have multiple chances to try to get a card. That's what's cool about that. There's multiple ones. Some of these is only one of, so some of these are definitely rare. But some of these there's multiple cards of. So I'll do the rare ones first, actually. So know which ones are the rarest. The rarest. Okay. So the rarest, it looks like, is mRNA. Then you have lipids. Then you have 2 of carbohydrates. Then you have 5 of protein hormone receptors. Then you got 6 protein hormone. And I'll just say a ton of just enzyme. And you got a ton of alcohol detoxification. And you got a ton of steroid hormone. And then you got a ton of steroid hormone receptors. But that's not it. Then you also have the viruses. Virus. You got a ton of virus attacks. You got to attack with the virus. Virus attack. Virus attack. Oh, and I'm sorry, they're off the different viruses. So you have 2 of Ebola. Bam. 2 of influenza. Bam. Maybe 2 of COVID. Nope, not yet. Maybe future expansion, question mark. Then we have rhinovirus. If not familiar, rhinovirus is the common cold. Cool, so that is all of the cards and all the stuffs. All right, so now I'll end with showing you close up what's on this board. So you can see a little easier. I'll keep the macromolecules here so you can actually see the different molecules again, which I think pretty cool. A cool collector's edition because you actually can see, like I said, the biology. We have the plasma membrane. Cytoplasm. Golgi apparatus. Mitochondria. Free ribosome. Gray flask. That's not a subcomponent, that's just to get a gray flask in the game. Laureates in biology. That's not a cell component, that's just an action in the game. Smooth ER. Rough ER. Nucleus. And of course the legend, which we don't have cubes, we have actually what they are. But it's so you know, so if someone says mRNA, what the hell are they talking about? They're talking about the black component. Well, cool. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. This is Cytosis Collector's Edition in a nutshell. In a future stream, possibly I will go into the minutia of the different game mechanisms for different cell components, as well as the corresponding cell biology. But that'll be in the future. But yeah, this is Cytosis, the Collector's Edition. Well, thanks for watching. If you liked, comment, or subscribe, that'd be most appreciated here on twitch.tv/Ismortah, as well as YouTube or Twitter. Well, again, thanks for watching. This is Ismortah, and I'll catch you next time.